Good morning. Monday, May 24th, 2021. Let's set our intentions and aspirations with the four measurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. Um, I think we'll start off today with a longer stretch of meditation and then read a couple of bits and then um, see if there's any questions or things we can talk about. But I know we've been doing 7, 9, 11 minutes, but it's 10:05. Let's do 21 minutes. It's probably longer than we've done in one stretch, but why not? We should, we should continually challenge ourselves. No, I may talk through it, maybe I won't. I may actually have to get up at some point for some other reason, but let's meditate. Those of you that have been doing this for a while now, either with us or on your own, you can either use a technique that we work on here, which is focusing on the breath, on where the air moves in and out of the body, and using the imagery of the cloud that arises in the clear, unstained, limitless sky and dissolves back into it. The thoughts appearing and disappearing in the same way. Or to build a bit off of Lama Surya Das's class. Now that you've been doing this technique and gotten a taste for what it is, for what meditation is, and where you go with it, you can also just settle into that calm nature mind, that clarity, calm, natural great peace. And then when you're aware of the thought again, you can apply the technique, go back to the breath, or go back, or just, you may be able to just settle right back into that natural great place of peace and calm. But either way, it's the mind looking at mind that we really are working on here. So, mindful awareness watching the mind, mindful awareness watching the thoughts, how they come and go. And as the thought comes, either apply the technique, go back to the breath, use the image of the cloud, or become aware of the thought arising and just relaxing back into that place of calm. Letting the thought go, letting the thought just dissipate, because when we bring that mindful awareness to the thought, that's often what happens. Some thoughts and emotions can get particularly sticky. And for that, you may need to, you know, apply the techniques, going back to the breath, using the image of the cloud in the sky, because sometimes the stickiness of the thought can be a little much to just leave it in its own place sometimes. Maybe not, depends on you. You have to taste it. You have to experiment with it. But the more you practice, and as you get used to this interplay, your mind and your body and your awareness starts to become trained to it, so you know where to go almost. When we're just starting, you need the technique because we haven't been there before. Mind looking at mind. Be aware of what's going on in your mind. Be aware of the thoughts as they arise. And it's the awareness that allows you to work with them. And before we commit to practice, we've basically been living uh, with the thought being the horse that draws the cart, rather than the other way around. The driver and the carriage controlling the horse. That's what we have to do. We have to switch roles rather than being led, through our lives, second to second, thought to thought, unaware, one leading to the next. We become aware of it. We become aware of the thought. It, in many ways, allows us to make sense of what these thoughts are, rather than just be unaware and reacting to them all the time. Reacting, physically or emotionally, mentally. The awareness allows us a certain amount of discernment, almost like a delay in terms of how we react to, the outside, to stimulus, to ourselves, how we react in situations. And we start to see how our mind works. And meditation really is the only way to do that. So your actions of body, speech, and mind can be more positive, basically. More in tune and in line with the teachings, be more of benefit to others rather than just reacting, um, through our default mechanism, which is often, involves protecting, cherishing the self, putting the self first. Great. That was the longest we've done together, I believe. Um, so I'm going to be reading, but I'd love to hear in the Q&A feature if you want to just you could send questions or whatever, but also I'd love to hear what your experience of this session was. This 21-minute meditation, if you would, that would be helpful. Also, I mentioned in the video yesterday that I posted, if I don't know if any of you had seen it, about breathwork. We're going to do that next week. I have somebody who's going to help us introduce the 9 purifying breaths, which are really good to do before you meditate. Somebody's going to be here to instruct us in that. Finally, Wednesday this week is Sagadawa. So that's Sagadawa is the holiest day, in the Buddhist calendar. It's celebrating the day of the Buddha's enlightenment, and also, I believe, his parinirvana, which is his passing from this world, which was also considered his greatest teaching because it taught his disciples very strongly about impermanence. So, on that day, it is said that positive and negative actions are multiplied, their effects are multiplied by many, many, many times. So it's a particularly good day to do good and not too bad, to put it simply. Um, okay. I might have read this last week, but I'm going to read it again because I need to hear it. This is by Nyosho Kempo Rinpoche. To work on the mind is a very vast subject. In fact, it is the subject of the entire Buddhadharma. In essence, the main reason the mind generates its confusing passions and intense emotions is the strong clinging to I, me, and mine. Because of that clinging, we suffer when we do not obtain all that the I wants, and we suffer by experiencing what the I does not want. It is through meditating over and over again on the illusory and insubstantial nature of mind, ego, of self, that we slowly can dissolve ego clinging. Among all the methods to achieve this result, the deepest one is the meditation on bodhicitta, which is unselfish love and compassion. To be full of love for all sentient beings and to consider others more important than ourselves. That is the very root of Dharma, combining wisdom and compassion. This is from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's a great Lama who is in Kathmandu, Nepal, at his monastery Kopan. He is alive and well. You can, you know, at some point, hopefully, he'll be touring, or you can go see him either in Nepal or in the United States. He's often in California. He has a few centers in California. He's a great, great Lama. When someone says something to you that really hurts your mind, I'll read that again. When someone says something to you that really hurts your mind, that is the most beneficial thing for your mind because it goes straight to your ego and your heart and touches your ego. This is what shows you like a mirror, like a teaching from the Buddha, your own mistaken thoughts, especially the ego. It shows that there is ego. And because there is ego, it hurts. Ties into the prior reading, you know. So we're working on dismantling the ego in a sense by becoming aware of how it plays into things we do, which is what we're doing through meditation. So when we become aware of our thoughts and start to see how many of them are about protecting that and defending that at all costs and at the expense of others, we can have some alternate way of acting in the world that's of benefit to others. Letting go of that tightness, letting go of that grasping all the time, which has become our default mechanism, and just thinking about how we want to behave. What are we fighting for? What are we acting for? What are our motivations? What kind of results do we want from our actions in the world and with others? This quote is attributed to Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, who is one of the people who brought Tibetan Buddhism to Tibet. The Buddha said that when we dedicate merit, which is what we do at the end of class, we dedicate the merit because meeting together like this and meditating together and having aspirations for all beings to have happiness like we do in the beginning, that generates a certain amount of merit. But generating merit's not enough. We have to dedicate it. Here's the quote. The Buddha said that when we dedicate merit, it is like adding a drop of water to the ocean. Just as a drop of water added to the ocean will not dry up. If we just have this drop sitting on a shelf, on a windowsill, it's going to dry up. If we put that drop in the ocean, it's not going to dry up. It's going to exist as long as the ocean itself exists, which could be millions of years. The same applies if we dedicate the merit of any virtuous deed. It merges with the vast ocean of merit that endures until enlightenment. I think that's very beautiful. Okay, we have some questions. I have another thing we could possibly read, but let's see what. Um, how can we practice non-attachment when close family members are actively hurting themselves and others? We have to we practice also because we want to have some kind of clarity in being able to act in the most effective way. Right? People are close family members. We don't want them to hurt themselves. We don't want them to hurt others. We don't want them to create negative karma. So practicing non-attachment is almost we try to take the emotional charge out of it, right? So when somebody who's really close, it could be a simple thing like the way they scratch their face. You know what I mean? Like you've seen them do this every day and it starts to annoy you, right? I mean, that's how absurd um, attachments can be. Living in close quarters, you become, so enmeshed with people that little tiny things can erupt into, negative situations. So we have to practice non-attachment in the way of being able to separate our emotional reaction from how we most productively can act in the situation. And that's achieved through the mindful awareness we cultivate in meditation, you know. So you know that someone close to you is actively hurting themselves or actively hurting others. And meditate on that. Meditate on how you can be more productive rather than just, sometimes it means you may not be able to see people. You have to create boundaries. Boundaries are good. Often in very close quarters and close relationships and familial ties, there's a lack of boundaries. And we grow used to that, and we kind of, well, that's what family is, or that's what my relationship is with my sister, or that's how it is, and that's what we have to pay attention to, because they may not be changing, they may not be meditating or working on themselves or following a spiritual path or following a spiritual path of evolution or whatever. That does not mean that we can't change, that we can't change the dynamic, that we can't create a boundary, that we can, put a little distance and have compassion for them. Have compassion that they're stuck in these negative emotions. They don't have a practice perhaps to deal with them in other ways. You know, you can meditate on them with compassion. You can maybe introduce them to the teachings if it's something you think they'd be responsive to. But often in these very close circles and quarters and relationships, when you begin to change, it has an effect. It has like a centrifugal effect on the people around you. Love the 21-minute session as it allows for time to transit through various states. How come I feel teary-eyed and all my emotions coming through? Maybe it's just maybe just from relaxing the mind and the body, and the emotions. Maybe the whatever tension, physically or mentally, that's been holding the emotion in. That's you've been allowing you to avoid processing it or feeling it. In the relaxing state that you're going into. It has nowhere to go but come out. But I guess it is. I mean, it's often to have a safe space to let it come out is good. First time here, what a great experience. I'm new to meditation, and what a difference it has made. Thrilled to have a longer 21 meditation. Felt a nice mindful connection, mindful breathing, all the way from Bangkok. Wow. Can I, while meditating, connect with a loved one that has departed onto the next life? Absolutely. Why not? And you can make aspirations uh, for that person to have a positive rebirth, you know? Sure. I mean, where it gets tricky is if you're connecting with a loved one and it's just about loss and it's just about the pain that you're not, I mean, with them anymore, um because that's really just about you, you know what I mean? If you expand that and try to connect with them and aspirations about them having a rebirth, then it's about being a benefit to them, which is the whole point of Buddhism, I guess. I tried to imagine I was driving on a highway and the thoughts kept coming and going as I was driving. Hmm, that's interesting. As long as you're aware that the thought is coming and then letting it go, you know? It's the space between the thoughts that we're trying to work in, right? Our normal mode that we habituated over countless eons and countless lifetimes is there's no gap almost, right? Between one thought leads to the next, leads to the next. They're almost like this kind of chain of interlinked mental activity. And the awareness that we have kind of splits that and leaves a gap. And it's that gap between the thoughts that we're working with, really. Um, and almost the practice is extending that gap. But we're not doing it by forcing. I got to stay in the gap. I can't, that force of like I can't think that negative kind of looking at it as a negative is not what we're doing. We do it by working with the thought. And what happens as the more you practice this, the more this starts to happen naturally. Kind of what Lama Surya Das was talking about. Setting your intention to meditate. You naturally start to open up that space. I found today's longer meditation session very useful, and something felt very different, although I'm not sure I can adequately articulate what that was. Sitting for longer just seemed to make it a little easier for me to acknowledge the thoughts as they arose. Something definitely felt different. Great. That's really good to hear. Um, I don't know if you need to be able to articulate it per se, but just like I said, tasting it. I think that's what you're describing. That taste of being able to acknowledge the thoughts. There's listen, like anything, practice. Practice brings progress. And you'll see. The more you do this, and if you commit to this, I mean, I started meditating around 2007. Um, and you'll see, you'll go through different phases where all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, I'm here now with it. You know what I mean? It's different than it was when it started. It's always, and some days it's still very difficult. Um, some days it's very easy, and not just on the cushion in life. Yesterday for some reason, I was really stuck with an anger, with an emotion for a lot of the day, and I had trouble letting it go. Uh, on the good side, I didn't allow myself to act out of it per se, but I couldn't really let it go. Whereas the day before yesterday, um, the thoughts I felt really. I'm not talking about on the cushion. I'm talking about like in the day, during the course of the day. Uh, Being able to kind of let thoughts go and wherever things were sticky or annoying me or something, but, particularly negative emotions, uh, negative thoughts, selfish thoughts. Day before yesterday, a little more ease and becoming aware of them and leaving them where they are. And yesterday I was just stuck with it. the benefit, the one saving grace is that I think through practice, uh, I didn't allow myself to act out of it, which maybe if I was not a practitioner, I would have. Right? That was my longest meditation personally, and also as part of the group. Thank you for the challenge. Overall, very positive, although sitting for that length was a little challenging. I did find myself feeling that I was getting into deeper layers of my meditation, which was an interesting sensation, something that hasn't happened before. Yeah, it is a challenge. But remember, basically, we're just sitting doing nothing. I've told this before, but maybe some of you haven't heard it. They ran an experiment once. I don't know who, some university or something, right? So they did this study, right? So they said people can sit and do nothing, or you had the choice to have mild electric stimulation, like mild electric shocks. It was still kind of shocking. It wasn't just harmless. Every like couple of 30 seconds or something like that, and more people chose to be shocked mildly with electricity than just sit and do nothing. That shows how difficult people have with sitting doing nothing. Um, it's much easier to be involved in whatever it is. You know what I mean? Um, and it's much easier to be lost in thought than it is to, have some presence of mind. And this, what we're cultivating here, really, you can bring into all your relationships and situations, and it's that word presence. I think that is descriptive of it. When you're with someone who's really present in the moment and listening, you know, and you're connecting in a conversation, and you can sense that they're hearing you and they're taking you in. That takes a certain kind of generosity in a way. They're not just wrapped up in their own judgment and filtering it through how they're perceiving you, but they're there with you. When you suggested that we challenge ourselves, it shifted something in me. I said yes. To be honest, the 21 minutes flew by. Yeah, I thought it kind of flew by too. Since I did not resist meditating for that period of time, it flowed. I realized that in the surrender, the willingness to take on a challenge, resistance diminishes, if not dissipates. It's funny because I was on the elliptical machine in the gym this morning for 20 minutes, and it seemed way longer than the 20 minutes we sat. That 20 minutes on the treadmill, elliptical seemed like way longer than the 20 minutes we were sitting for. I don't know, whatever that means. The extra time allowed for the dissolution of the thoughts. Thoughts in my busy mind seemed to pop up and resurface again and again, but by the end of this session, I felt the eventual dissolution of repetitive thoughts, which may not have happened in a shorter meditation. Just before our session, I had to collect my wife. I haven't seen or held my wife for 14 months due to the pandemic. So here I am doing our session with my wife, who's doing her thing in the backyard, in the background. Yet, despite not having seen her or held her for so long, our practice maintained me returning to the breath, being present whilst being greater aware, at the same time having a greater appreciation for my wife. I don't think that discipline would have happened without dedicating to meditation. Mm, that's great to hear that. I like that. When I first heard 21 minutes, I didn't think I could do it, but I feel better. I feel like the last few minutes really grounded me. I found it easier to do 21 minutes knowing I wasn't doing it alone. Can I progress in meditation without being Buddhist? Yes, absolutely. Going back to this, I found it easier to do the 21 minutes knowing that I wasn't doing it alone. Again, going like talking about the gym, my wife and I work do gym together, and it's like that doing it together often motivates you, when you don't feel like it or you feel lazy, making that commitment to other people often really helps. The same with this class for me too, it's a commitment to show up and to be prepared and to take it seriously. My anxiety levels went through the roof this morning. This helped immensely. When thoughts crept in, I focused on my breath and the five senses, just feeling the weight of my body, watching the black of my eyelids, hearing the birds. Thank you. Is it okay to use the vision of the movement of the ocean in and out to mimic your breathing while in meditation? Well, these two comments go together. Feeling the weight of your body, watching the back of your eyelids, hearing the birds chirping, using the any of that's good as long as it's facilitating the meditation. In other words, as long as it's allowing you to become aware of the thoughts and letting the thoughts go. If it's getting lost in hearing the birds and you start another thought train relating to the birds or the ocean, then it may not be the best thing. But only you can decide that. Because we're not just meditating to calm down. A lot of people have come to meditation, to this class and to others during this last year because it was particularly stressful, which is fine. But committing to the practice now, it's not, we have to become aware that it's not just about calming down. It's really, there's a much bigger picture, which is about, you know, cultivating love and compassion for other beings, not just human beings. And how do we do that? It's through, becoming aware of how our mind works and how our minds in the past have facilitated just reifying the self, protecting the self, and having a bigger view and a bigger picture that encompasses, being a benefit to others. I think I've been confusing compassion with a lack of boundaries. That's a really good point. I appreciate you saying that. That's a good point. I think I've been confusing compassion with a lack of boundaries. I appreciate how you just answered the other question by saying that it's okay to create boundaries, to meditate on that. Sometimes situations cannot be helped or changed by trying to engage with people where the ego is clinging on to things uh, changing and being fixed. I also really like the longer meditation. Yeah, boundaries are good. Boundaries can be also not just helpful to ourselves, but helpful to the other. The one that we're trying to help or trying to have compassion for. I get distracted visualizing the cloud clear sky. In my case, a candle, and I forget to notice the breathing. Mm. Um, That's Alice. I'd love to know how long and how often you've been practicing and where you're at in your practice. If it's new, you know. I mean, some of that's just a matter of habituation. Back to the breath, getting distracted. When you say getting distracted visually, the cloud, do you mean getting lost in thought, or thoughts creeping in, not. I need a little more. Because it's like we're practicing to deal with distraction. Distraction's almost our default mechanism. This is my first time. I'm not sure if I'm doing it effectively. It was a really nice 21 minutes of calm that even if I had a few small breaks of concentration. If you only had a few small breaks of concentration, that's pretty great, considering it was your first time. If you're not sure you're doing effectively, on the IGTV or on the website, um, Michael Imperioli Meditation 101, there's the 101 classes, which has detailed instructions of technique. I felt the longer meditation was good. I'm happy to know I can sit longer. Yeah. Typically, I sit for 10 minutes every day. Yeah. Right now, I feel more rested, aware, and conscious. Does drinking coffee before meditating make it even harder to calm your thoughts? I guess it could. I mean, it's a stimulant. That's something you have to decide for yourself because coffee affects people differently. I mean, I don't find it. You could try it without coffee and see if the quality of meditation changes. Haven't done 20 minutes of meditation for over a year. It was difficult in parts, almost an endurance kind of feeling, like a gym workout. The moments of peace and clarity that popped up later in the sitting felt more powerful than the recent shorter meditation. So that's good. Do you ever doubt your beliefs, as religion may have just been a product of needing some sort of faith to mentally get through such tough climates and conditions in older days? Um, to me, Buddhism is not. It's not a belief. I mean, what am I? Buddhism believes that we have to kind of do good, do no harm, do good, and tame the mind. There's no belief there. You know what I mean? Um, there's no belief that my mind is busy, and if I work on calming it, I can be a better human being and be better to other people. That takes no belief. I mean, that's just like physical, scientific. I find a lot of Buddhism is that. Reincarnation could get a little trickier, but I mean, if you really start to meditate and study Buddhism, a lot of reincarnation you have to deal with in terms of what is being reincarnated, which means what is the self. Um, and that's there's a lot of teachings on that, and that's very complex and stuff like that. But to me, it makes a lot of sense. It's not so much about believing. I find, and not just me, but uh, a lot of the Dalai Lama does a lot of um, programs and talks with physicists and science. A lot of quantum physics and um, modern physics really matches up well with Buddhism. You know, Buddhism is not a theistic religion. It doesn't believe in a creator God per se. You um, Buddha was a man who attained enlightenment, and as my teacher Garchen Rinpoche said when I asked him about doing this class, he said, "Remember that Buddha is not the name of a man; it's the name of mind." I don't really even consider Buddhism a religion. I'll be honest with you. Science of mind and a way of perceiving the world and reality. That's just me. So for me, faith doesn't really come into play. Karma, action, every action having a reaction, and that seems scientific as well. Can you drink alcohol and still be a Buddhist? Yeah. Um, but there are certain, there's Buddhism is not a one size fits all. Like these are the rules and this is what you have to do. There's all types of different, you know, so let's focus on Tibetan Buddhism, which is what I practice, right? The Dalai Lama is known as, in Tibet, the Dalai Lama was like, for many centuries, not just the spiritual leader, but also the leader of the nation. And in some sense, he's still kind of revered as that and as the spiritual leader. But it's not like the Pope, where the Dalai Lama says, "This is what we're going to do," and all the Tibetan Buddhists follow. It's not so much like that. You follow a teacher, you become the student of a teacher, and that teacher's lineage. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's several different lineages. That's what you're going to follow. My teacher, Garchen Rinpoche, asked that his students do not consume intoxicants. Maybe have a bit of alcohol now and then is okay. He's even said that it could be medicinal, but to be intoxicated, he doesn't want his students to be intoxicated. because I guess I don't want to speak for him, but I guess because it can form certain attachments and things. There are other Tibetan Buddhist lamas who are fine with students drinking. So it's really about your individual teacher and what they want you to, what they think is most beneficial for you. I needed that push. Appreciated the longer session. I'm feeling more confident about meditating longer on my own as well, which I needed. Appreciate you holding these sessions. The best and most informative practice I've had with you. Cool. This is cool stuff. I'm glad to get this feedback. Any book you'd recommend to someone new? Uh, hmm. I always recommend the Dalai Lama's the Art of Happiness. That's a good one. Um, Lama Yeshe has a lot of really good books for people new to Buddhism. Compassion for myself has helped me form boundaries with others while simultaneously creating compassion for those who have harmed my ego. Meditation is helping me with this. Very good. Alice saying newish, 6 months. Okay. She's referring to saying that the visualization of the sky and the clouds was distracting her. But I'm a little confused. So when you're not visualizing the clouds and stars, are you not distracted? That's my question. So you could also just try mind looking at mind. If the visualization somehow you're wired in a way that seems distracting, if you can just sit, let the breath just do its thing. You know what I mean? And just be aware of thoughts and let the thought go. Often the awareness of the thought kind of lets it go. You know what I mean? Once you're aware. So I'm aware that at 1 o'clock I have to, hail a taxi cab and go back to the breath. Maybe just work with the thought, and when you're aware of the thought, go to the breath. See if that helps. All right, that was fun. I think we're gonna maybe start doing this as a weekly thing. Let's dedicate the merit, put the drop of merit into the ocean of eternity. By this merit may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. So the merit we gain from today is not just for ourselves and for this moment, that by dedicating it, that whatever we generated as a group today in terms of merit, because there's a positive action and positive intentions, now is dedicated and will always, that aspiration will exist until all beings attain enlightenment. That's a good thing. We'll see you next week.